All right, we're at Baltimore Comic Con 2017. I'm talking to Clay Chapman about his Boom series, Lazaretto. Um, Easily the first question. I've read it. It's a really cool first issue. Where did the concept come from?
Oh man, it's a true story. Totally happened. I mean, yes and no. I was reading. I guess back in like 2009, there was the swine flu hit.
Yeah.
There was the avian flu, and then like a couple years later, the swine flu had this little like bubble up. And they were. I mean, it just so happened to take place like September, October. So kids were going to school, and there were certain colleges around the country that were instating these. They were voluntary, but they were basically self-isolation facilities. And they would take buildings on their campus and turn them into, quarantines. And there were some interviews where basically kids were like, I don't have to go to class, I don't have to do my homework, I just get to hang out and, essentially, party all day. And I read that and I said to myself, man, if you just crank the volume up on the bug, that would be a pretty intense kind of experience. So that's where Lazaretto came from.
Okay, so the characters are really interesting. You obviously have a girl that's rather conservative background. You, of course, have a guy from the inner city. When coming up with characters for this sort of story, how did you, where did they come from? How did you kind of like to strike that balance?
Yeah.
Obviously you don't want to run into like stereotypes at all, but there's obviously that alone becomes an interesting part of the aspect of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, college was always about the kind of like, there are these icons and like these students that I remember when I was in school, and they remain kind of like ubiquitous. Like to this day, like there's going to be the granola girl, there's going to be the kind of like the senior Wolf Lothario guy, and I feel like for me, I wanted to kind of ground Charles and Tamara, our two lead characters, in this way that they felt kind of like opposites, but that they would kind of like, who are the two characters who in any other circumstance would not be friends,
right.
and pair them up in this situation that like once the outbreak hits, these two are basically off and running, and they're the only two people who, they've not made friends with anybody else here at school because of their backgrounds, because of who they are and their belief systems. So they're isolated, and yet when the outbreak happens, they're kind of thrust together in this way that a really organic, natural friendship is born.
So the thing that really stuck out to me in the first issue is the fact that it's a college campus makes it really claustrophobic in a way. With a lot of these stories, it's you start in that small location and it expands to this bigger world. You seem to be taking the opposite, where there's this bigger world of kids from different parts of the country coming together, and then it's slowly getting, shrinking as far as the space in their world as is. So a couple, things coming off of that is, one, like, why did you decide to go that route? Because you easily could have done like the entire college campus. The other would be is, for you as a writer, creating that claustrophobic feel to it. Is that something you're purposely trying to do? Is that something that you have in mind?
Yeah. I mean, college is a bubble. I mean, it totally is. Like you on a good day, you lose sight of what's happening in the outside world. Like it just doesn't exist at a certain point. So I wanted to take in an environment that felt kind of hermetically sealed to begin with, and then just cut off the air completely, like, by kind of tamping down the student body and putting them in the dorm. I'm a big fan of J.G. Ballard, and he wrote this novel called High Rise, which is all about like, civil society breaking down in an apartment complex. So it's kind of like a little riff on that, but I feel like college dorms are something that we all have had kind of our own personal experiences with, and it would be kind of an easy frame of reference for people to say, like, oh, I remember my roommate and how kind of hellacious that was. So it's kind of taking a vocabulary, but layering on the horror of this outbreak, this epidemic, and letting it kind of like, push these characters, it kind of in their own interesting, crazy, scary way.
So you kind of mentioned that the concept of it came from the swine outbreak and avian flu and all that, there are tons of outbreaks on college campuses.
Yeah.
Usually, I'm totally blanking on the disease that always seems to happen. Like every year, there's always stories of something cropping up. When you wrote the series, like, were you looking at what actual reactions were? Like, have you done research as to how they deal with this sort of stuff?
I mean, I did a fair amount of research in terms of the swine flu and just how it played out. And we wanted to take, in our story, it's the canine flu, which is a thing. I mean, it is, in fact, like, it hasn't made the zoonotic leap yet, but it is definitely a blight for puppies across the world. And for me, it's like, beginning with the what if, taking something that's rooted in reality and just kind of, amplifying it just enough that it's more possible. It's almost like more fiction or science than science fiction. So that's the hope, at least.
With the art of it, so one of the things that jumped out as far as the art style, obviously you're not the artist, but there's like these really cool kind of interspersed images of the disease and virology kind of going on.
Yeah.
Was that something that you thought of, or was that something like the artist brought to it?
Jay's amazing. Jay Levang, like, I count my lucky stars. I feel like Jay has brought something to the table that really kind of pushes the comic to a higher level. And the conversations that were had between Jay and our editor Eric at Boom was, you want to feel like you're in a petri dish. You want to feel like you're under the microscope. And given the fact that college,
I should be scrubbing myself after.
I mean, how amazing is it that, like, that kind of palpable response is, by flipping the page, like, it just feels like it should have come stocked with hand sanitizer or something, But I think that is all Jay's artwork of this kind of, like, it feels a little wet, it feels pulpy, it feels almost like, the deeper into the comic you go, it's almost like you're watching something decay, which I think is really gorgeous.
Yeah. Obviously, the story's taking place on a college campus. There's probably all hell breaking loose elsewhere. And of course that's on my mind too while reading this. For you, like, have you thought about what's going on in, like, the rest of the country or the world, or are you just focused on this? Is this something we might get hints of, maybe in a second volume or something like that?
I mean, very much so. And I mean, in my mind, with the best outbreak movies like Contagion and Outbreak, and even like the zombie outbreak films, like, you get the macro, but I feel like it has to be, like, I wanted to start in the micro and really live in there. Like, like, think in terms of, like, the most hermetically sealed environment where it alludes to something larger happening outside. But I mean, if college is all about kind of like navel gazing and, like, your world becomes so internal and so small, like, how amazing is it to just push the rest of the world just out of the picture and just, like, focus on this, so that when the floodgates open, or the rest of the world almost feels like it's kind of impeding upon, or that's when the flood really happens. But yeah, it's out there and it's so close, and yet it's so far away. That's the hope, at least.
So
Part two. Lazaretto dose.
The virus strikes back. So by the time I finished it, I was so happy I've been done with college. It's one of the, like, I finished it, I'm like, oh, thank God. I'm not going to mention how many years out that I am, but way more than you probably think I am. You writing it, kind of, is that crossing your mind at all?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm a stodgy old coot too, so, like, I feel like at this point it was kind of reintroducing myself or reacquainting myself with my college experience, but at the same time acknowledging that, like, the time since then, things have changed, and students have changed. But what I do find impressive or interesting is that, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it was actually, for what research I did in terms of the college experience today, kids these days, they're not, the clothes may change, the hairstyles may change, but the attitude, surprisingly, is like, there's a consistency, there's a thread to it. And if you can tap into that and be real, because I think the worst is when you've got an older person kind of talking down to their readers, or to whatever their audience age group is. I wanted it I just wanted it to feel like it was grounded, and then, you know, have all hell break loose so that those characters can run.
Well, think of it being real. Immediately jumps to me is social media. I gotta imagine that's got to come into play somehow in the story.
Yeah, issue two is all like there's the moment where everybody is just kind of with their phones and, you know, and
Instagramming.
yeah. I mean, how amazing! I mean, I feel like we're in a place right now where, like, I have this canine flu, and I want to take a selfie of myself, and I want to blog about it, and I think that attitude, this kind of me culture of, like, documenting, like, we need to kind of preserve the moment, like, that will definitely play, and in issue 2 starts it off. So we wanted to introduce you to the world, get you introduced to these main characters, and then we wanted the bug to bite, basically, and then, you know, now we're off to the races. So when issue 2 starts, it's the social media world, and then later issues we've got, you know, what if we took away the electricity? What if we yeah. So all of a sudden, you know, if this is dead, like, how do you now I have to interact with you, and, like, you know,
coordinate everything after
exactly
that,
and then, like, just peeling away those layers and layers of, like, creature comforts first, and then the kind of dire, like, running water or food, or, you know, it's like if we go deep enough, you know, it starts with social media and your Facebook and your iPhone, but then electricity, then the water, then it really kind of burrows down to the core of, like, how you survive. So yeah, it's gonna be a doozy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I appreciate you talking. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.